Good evening, everybody. Okay, I want to apologize. That overture was created for my festival up in the San Francisco Bay Area, where we were, in fact, earlier this year celebrating our 20th anniversary. But here in Los Angeles, it's actually our 24th anniversary. With our fabulous partners at the American Cinematheque. Thank you all for coming out tonight. This is absolutely great because it feels like we're reuniting after all of this craziness. We've done a Noir City Festival here in LA since the pandemic, but this is great to see a full house of people not wearing masks. Don't call me later this week and tell me that you're out, okay? I don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear that. But we are, since the last time we convened in a full house for Noir City, it seems like we have reached an existential crossroads in many things. Look, the writers are out, the actors are out. People are asking me, is TCM going to survive? I am entirely in support of all the guilds, and I am telling you that TCM is not going anywhere. And if at the end of 2024 TCM does go somewhere, I'll still be here.
And on YouTube.
Because I was doing this before they put me on television, right? So, I mean, yeah. Come out and watch movies in a movie theater the way they were supposed to be seen. A quick funny story. So young people ask me all the time, like, why should I go to the movies? The movies are out of date. Like going to the movies when I can just stream it. Or I can buy physical media and it has all these wonderful special features. And I say, listen, kid, I want to tell you something about a special feature that you're never going to get on a Blu-ray or a DVD, right? I remember standing in line to go to movies when I was a young kid, right? Great lines of my life, right? Star Wars was a great line. Jaws was a great line. But the greatest line of all time was Alien. I went to see Alien at the North Point Theater in San Francisco. Right? Yes! Huge line around the block. Why was this the greatest movie line in history? I got laid that night by a woman I met in line. When they managed to put that as a special feature on your Blu-ray and DVD, then you're on to something. But I'm telling you, kids, great things can happen when you go to the movies. So the theme of this year's Noir City Film Festival, we want to talk about longevity, why film noir is still so immensely popular with the public. Look, every movie that we are showing in this theater during this festival is 75 years old. They were all made in 1948. They have all stood the test of time. You gotta wonder, are we gonna be watching some films made, you know, last year, this year, 75 years from now? Maybe, maybe. But all of these films, right? The movie that you're about to see, Key Largo, was released in July of 1948. The second half of our double bill tonight, Sorry Wrong Number, was released in September of 1948. These two movies literally came out weeks apart. And the year was just incredible. It was a high watermark for movies in general, but film noir in particular in Hollywood. So thank you very much for coming out. This movie, I've never shown this movie at Noir City in LA before. This is a first, right? I don't really know why that is, but let me share this little tidbit of information with you. Several years ago, I had the pleasure of going to New York at the expense of the American Cinematheque because Lauren Bacall had agreed to do a special appearance at the Egyptian Theater for a retrospective of her films, and then she couldn't actually do it. So they sent me to New York to interview her on camera for a thing that they would play during the retrospective. So I actually got to have a one-on-one sit-down interview with Lauren Bacall.
Wow.
It was magnificent. But my favorite moment in the whole thing was the young woman, she was probably 22 or 23 years old, who worked for some blog or something, and she was looking at her BlackBerry before she went in to interview Bacall, and she turned to me and she said, "Remind me, wasn't she married to somebody famous?" So two of them in fact, right? And that interview with Bacall, I asked her about this movie, and I said, now I heard a rumor that John Huston and Richard Brooks went to Havana and got into some card games, and they lost so much money that on the flight back, John Huston asked the execs at Warner Brothers, I've got to do something, because I've got to make some money right away, because I lost all this dough. And Brooks is really pissed off at me. And I said to Lauren Bacall, do you think there was truth to this? And she said, Richard Brooks, that cheap son of a bitch, there is no way that he would have gambled his money away in a Havana casino. So that, no, not buying that story at all. But this is the fourth film that Bogart and Bacall made together. The last film they would make together as co-stars. It's very unusual, based on a play by Maxwell Anderson that is virtually nothing like the movie that you are about to see. It is an outgrowth of the Spanish Civil War in the 1930s, and so the first half of the stage play actually takes place in Spain, in Andalusia, with soldiers who were fighting the Spanish Civil War. And the character Bogart plays in this film, Frank McCloud, is come back in the second half of the play. He comes back very much like in the film that you're about to see, to atone for what he thinks is his responsibility for the death of this woman's husband in Andalusia. They changed things for the movie version. They had no third act. It was a stage play. There is no way that they could do the same ending in a film that they did on stage. So they borrowed liberally from Ernest Hemingway's To Have and Have Not for the third act of this screenplay. Written by Richard Brooks, directed fabulously by John Huston, with this magnificent cast. Edward G. Robinson had sworn he was never going to play Rico ever again in a movie, and by this time he had completely changed his career and was in film noir. He was playing middle-aged milquetoasts and guys who were, you know, browbeaten by these sexy women. But this was a huge comeback for Edward G. Robinson, very much like when Jimmy Cagney played Cody Jarrett in White Heat the next year. These guys were going back to their Warner Brothers roots and playing these vicious criminals. The scene stealer in this movie, though, is Claire Trevor, who won a supporting actress Oscar for her performance as Gay Dawn in this movie. And I did have the pleasure of speaking with her several times, and she said that sneaky John Huston, I was so terrified about doing, I don't know how many of you have seen this movie before, but she won this Oscar for basically her performance of the song Moanin' Low, which is a fantastic moment in movie history. And she was so nervous about doing this song that John Huston realized, I'm going to spring this on her. And so they were about to break for lunch, and he said, I think we should shoot Claire's number now. And she was totally unprepared for this, which aided the performance immeasurably. She is so terrified and vulnerable when she sings this song. And that's what made John Huston such a fabulous director, knowing exactly when to spring this on her. Won her an Oscar. So it's a magnificent film. And I want to get this show started because the second half of the double bill tonight I love just as much as this half, and I hope you're all sticking around for it. This is only night one, and I am here with my esteemed colleague Alan Rohde, who will introduce the second feature tonight. This is going to be a blast. So I'm so thankful for you guys coming out. I love to see a packed theater. Thank you to the American Cinematheque. 24 years I have been doing this. So thanks very much. Enjoy Key Largo.